program is entitled The Keynote Address. I think it's a misnomer. We have heard 11 keynote addresses today. I think all of us are aware that we are in the presence of wisdom. And so this is no more a keynote address than any of the others that you've heard this morning. Indeed, I affirm, celebrate, applaud the kind of commitment to inclusion that we have already heard. Several years ago in the United States, working with the renowned scientist Carl Sagan, President Clinton convened a White House conference on the possibility of life on Mars. One of the scientists in that gathering, without equivocation, said, "In the biosphere, independence means death. Going it alone is not safe," in other words. That scientist saw life as its fullest potential, as life lived out in interaction with other people. Interdependence is a necessity. In that same meeting, another scientist said, "The future either will be ecumenical in nature or there will be no future." My personal belief is that the future for us, our shared future, either will be interfaith, interreligious in nature, or we will not experience a meaningful and peaceful future. I cannot commend highly enough Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka and the courage, the dreaming, the possibilities they have affirmed in bringing us together. And I'm grateful that the embassy of my own nation of citizenship has been a sponsor of that. I affirm your presence here. It is important that we share together. I want to share with you a vision. It is a vision that I have developed over the last 20 years. It is a vision that has captured my conscience. It is a vision that is as social and spiritual as it is political. It is a vision that is as ancient as religious wisdom, and yet as current as the stories we read this morning in the Daily Mirror or Ceylon Daily. It is a vision that is interreligious as well as it is Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, and all other traditions. My vision embraces the metaphor of religion as an experience of walking together. The vision comes down to those two words, walking together. I dream of the possibility of us and others like us around the globe all walking together, not attempting to become just like one another, not demanding conformity to one single mindset, not demanding one political identity, not demanding that a particular belief should be shared by everybody, learning from each other, walking together, talking to each other. Walking together involves commitment to staying on a journey that sometimes can be difficult, sometimes can be controversial, sometimes can be downright painful. But we have to stay the course on that journey if we are going to carry out our commission and our obedience to that commission of walking together. It is, I want you to notice both words in the vision. The first one is walking. I see spirituality as a way of walking. Not everybody sprinting, trying to outrun each other. Not everybody seeking to be first and everything for the good of their religion. People walking together, taking time to know each other as they walk. I also think that togetherness is essential. If we go our separate ways, we'll never come together. It is in sittings like this, meetings such as the one that we are in, that allow us to learn how to talk with each other, to respect each other, and to walk together. Now, my guess is that every person in this room would agree on the importance of interreligious relationships, interreligious cooperation. Seldom do I ever hear anybody say, I don't want to be a part of that kind of future. Now, the difficulty is what I want to address primarily. The difficulty is, what do we do after the vision? If we commit ourselves to walking together, what does that mean in terms of the priorities of our existence? I understand that right now, and several people already have alluded to it this morning, right now, religion is receiving a lot of criticism. Confusion about causes of violence is rampant because many current movements, as you well know, seek public affirmation and even financial support by describing their initiative as religious. There are many reasons for violence. I don't believe religion is one of them. We've heard various people, wise people, talk this morning about the nature of religion. When I look at violence in our world, I see causes like political causes and economic and territorial and racial, but not religious. That brings me to say, and I think it is a foundational principle for us to embrace in looking at our world. Not everybody who says they're religious is religious. Some people are using religion. A lot of violence is being perpetrated in the name of religion that is about something else entirely. Not everybody who says their religion is good is even talking about religion. That comes out in the process of looking carefully at movements and people. So, if we all agree that we like to get along, if we all agree that we're ready to extend hands to each other and walk across this country and eventually across our world, holding hands, walking together, how do we do it? What's the strategy? What are some of the details? I think there is no better place to begin than to say, from step one, we have to agree to cherish religious freedom for ourselves and to exercise our support of religious freedom freedom. I mean the freedom of all people to embrace and to practice the religion of their choice or to choose to live without religion. By religious freedom, I mean that no religion attempts to use the power of government to demand that all of its citizens practice the same religion. Historically, freedom and religion have been best friends. The very nature of religion requires freedom because authentic religion is always the consequence of a decision made by a person, not under pressure, not being compelled, but making a decision freely. I will say to you what I say repeatedly to audiences to which I speak in the United States. Unless every one of us is enjoying religious freedom, then all of us are in danger of losing religious freedom. It is when we work for each other's freedom that we have the most right to exercise it ourselves. Let me be very specific. If Muslims are not free to construct mosques, Sikhs to build gurdwaras, Hindus to erect temples, Buddhists to build shrines, Jews to build synagogues, Christians to build church houses, and others to remain non-religious, then none of us is really free. I told you, I think, it was implicit if I didn't. Walking together is not easy. It is filled with difficult circumstances because protecting freedom is not easy. Claiming our freedom is pretty much what most of us want to do. Helping to preserve others' freedom is what we have to do if we're to enjoy religious freedom. Now, walking together that's the first step that I would mention. Walking together requires vigorous personal discipline and tireless social action. And I want to sketch for you a few more aspects of the strategy for walking together. Now, we're going to have the opportunity after lunch for some dialogue, and so I'm going to give you just a little bit of the strategy, knowing that I may be leaving out something that you're interested in, and if you are, we'll pick it up during the dialogue session. There's an old saying that asserts the devil is in the details. Anybody can get applause for saying, I'm for peace. We need to be together. The real challenge comes when we implement strategies for accomplishing that goal. So let me say right up front that the strategies that I am suggesting to you today are effective in promoting interreligious cooperation and nurturing religious communities in which people do walk together, but none of them is easy. Let me just tick them off. The first part of the strategy is we as religious leaders have to speak honestly. We have to tell the truth. We dare not critique other religions until we have looked honestly at our own religion. Now, let me give you an example of the difficulty of doing that. I think it is terribly important that we look at our scriptures, those letters, books, traditions that inspire us, that come to us as sacred literature. Let us look at them and see, is there something in our scriptures that causes us to be prejudiced against other people? Is there something in our scriptures that seems to catapult us into conflict and controversy? Let me tell you my own experience with that. I have watched in the United States a lot of prejudice exchanged between the three Abrahamic traditions. And in most instances, a lot of what is said in prejudicial judgment is backed up by people quoting their scriptures. I have been guilty of that, and I am sorry. No one passage in a whole book of scriptures, no one book in a whole volume of sacred literature can be taken out of context and used to contradict the whole message of that body of scriptures. I was proud of being at the National Cathedral in the United States and convening the first service of this kind in that great building. We read from the Hebrew scriptures, we read from the Quran, we read from the Christian scriptures, and we talked about how those scriptures have been misused and how people have taken one little bit of scripture and turned it on its head so that it sounded like it was saying something that it wasn't saying. That's important for us to do, because sometimes the quoting of scriptures taken out of context can leave an impression that our religion is not as peaceful and cooperative as we know it is. Secondly, I would say when we talk with each other, let us always talk with civility. Let us speak to each other with respect. Gandhi once said, "It's a mystery to me how anyone can feel honored by the humiliation of another human being." I know there is a lot of conversation going on right now in Sri Lanka, as it is around the world, about hate speech. We have to talk about that honestly. Hate speech is only a short step away from physical attempts to silence those who are hated. Civility is an important ingredient in our speech. I understand that some people, especially in my country, some people say, oh, civility is kind of like good etiquette. It's associated with weakness, inappropriate compromise. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Civility is a form of speech that allows us to talk about anything and everything rationally and respectfully without the conversation ending in conflict. So, honesty about our religion, speaking with civility. The third, I would say, is refrain from entangling partisan politics and religious institutions. I have learned this cautionary reality in my own country, where unfortunately scores of people have used religion as a rationale to try and take over the government as a means of perpetrating only their values. But reciprocally, many government officials have tried to use religions and religious language and religious leaders to advance their political aspirations. Let me speak to you out of the experience of history. Every time we have seen an attempt to merge religion and government, it hasn't worked. Religion has lost. Government has won, whether for the good or the bad. Now, I understand that I need and you need to find ways to express our values in the larger society. And to do that, we have to talk with government leaders. But it is a far different matter to say that I am speaking with my representatives in government about the need for funding for hungry people to be fed, or for a better system of education, or for more equity and justice for women around the world. There is a far cry from lobbying for that kind of justice and saying to saying to a political leader, look, my religion needs a boost. We need some power. We need some money from you. Two very different things. In my country, and that's the only one I can talk about honestly because I can't pass judgment on anyone else's. But in my country, we have found that in every major religion, there are people who I call fundamentalists. People who speak only in absolutes. People who embrace only people like themselves. I have worked hard against Christian fundamentalists who have tried to take over our government in order to legislate their theology and their values. I appreciate cooperation between religion and government, but I am always leery when religion turns to government to give it its power, its money, and its influence. Another strategy, which I know is familiar to every one of you, is action-centered dialogue. I'm absolutely convinced that interreligious dialogue can open our ears and our hearts to the possibility of living with people even despite our deepest differences and walking together. It can move us to new methodologies of cooperation. But let me tell you, I'm speaking very honestly here. The foundation of interreligious dialogue has to be meaningful interpersonal relationships. Far too many dialogues in the name of religion deal only with surface issues and never get to discussions about the issues that are most troublesome to us in our relationships with each other. That the purpose of interreligious dialogue is mutual understanding. We have to have mutual trust in each other to discuss the hardest issues that exist between us so that we can find common ground there or find a way of mutual trust that lets us keep together. I must share an honest observation, another honest observation. Interreligious dialogue can be one of the boringest experiences in your life because people keep the dialogue up here. 2 years ago, I went to an international interreligious dialogue. We met in Madrid. We were there for 4 days, and the only speeches that were given said how important dialogue is. But we never dialogued. We never talked to each other. We just talked about how good it is to have dialogue. We have to get to the issues. Then, and stay with me on this one because I may have misnamed it, but I think it's important to form heretical friendships. I'm talking about to form relationships that no one else thinks that you would ever try to form. But developing friendship with people who are different from you is the way in which to take giant steps forward in getting to know each other so that we can walk together. What we have seen in the United States, and I've seen in polls done right here in Sri Lanka, the truth, that the most prejudiced people in the world are most prejudiced against people whom they've never met, whom they don't know, who they simply have stereotyped as somebody they don't like. I think we also have to deal with religious extremism decisively. Every religion seems to include members vulnerable to or bent toward extremism. We are the people who have to step up to the microphone, to the television camera, to the radio microphone and say, this isn't our religion. We don't know these people as religious people. Our religion is about relationships. It is about reconciliation. It is about walking together. I know, and I bet you could say the same thing to me. We've had a lot of Islamophobia in the United States. And I've tried to speak and have on behalf of the Muslim community as well as the Muslim community speaking for itself. I talk with a lot of media people and I say, why do you always just carry the message of the extremists? They say, oh, well, there's nobody on the other side to speak up. Don't believe it and don't buy it and don't let it happen. We need to be speaking for each other. That religion is not about extremism. It is about what our scriptures lead us to say in getting along with each other. I'm sure that if we sat down with each other to list our religious values, that we would find pretty much the same list on every one of our notepads. That's good that we share those values. But let me tell you, those values aren't worth the paper they're written on if we don't put them into practice. It's not enough to sit down and say, I love justice, I love mercy, I love the idea of compassion. It is not what we say about those that will make a difference. It's what we do about them that will make a difference. I want to encourage you, there's been a lot of talk about tolerance. I want to encourage you to let this be the first step in something you all are doing together as you try to work together and walk together. Tolerance does have a distance to it with which I'm uncomfortable. We need not only to be able to look at each other and say, you're okay with me. We also have to be able eventually to engage each other, dialogue with each other, embrace each other, and say, not only do I tolerate you, I love you. I appreciate you. I want to spend time with you. If you want to walk a short distance, walk alone, and walk fast. If you want to walk together, walk slowly. Reach out your hand. I want to end by telling you a story that is meaningful to me because it gets at a commonality that we need to be reminded of regularly. Even in religious dialogue, we're still talking across religions. Many years ago, a friend told me of an incident in the life of a young man who had lived for years in a village nestled at the foot of a mountain on the top of which sat a monastery. One day on a street in the village, this young man encountered one of the monks. He had always wanted that to happen. He was thrilled as well as awestruck to see someone from the monastery visiting in the village And so the young man approached the monk and said, "Holy Father, I've always wanted to know, what do you do up there in that monastery?" He was imagining profound spiritual experiences, holy practices, extended periods of prayer, ethereal musings, daily encounters with saints. "Is that what you do there?" he said. "Oh no, my son," the monk explained. "What we do up there is we fall down and we get up. And we fall down and we get up." My friends, those of us walking together, all alike, get up and fall down and get up again. Our hope is not so much that changing someone else's mind will happen or learning a new doctrine for ourselves. Our hope is that on our shared journey, we can help others when they fall down, and we can feel the strong arms of those others under us when we fall. Such is the blessing of walking together.